In my many discussions with people from literally all walks of life, of different ethnicities, socioeconomic backgrounds, and different locations throughout the world, I've heard some of the most intriguing accounts of ordinary people experiencing extraordinary things, things that would be deemed paranormal in nature. The stories range from ongoing shadow person visits to spontaneous out-of-body experiences to reunions with the dead and beyond. Each story, told by the individual, is lucid in detail, passionate in delivery, and yet too readily dismissed by that individual once the story's been told. Well, why is that? I find it somewhat interesting and yet not surprising that nearly every time I'm told a story by a person who has had an anomalous encounter in their lives, a subsequent admission of, "I never told anyone this before," becomes the typical footnote. In one case, I was listening to a woman's account of seeing her recently deceased grandmother materialize at the foot of her bed and in front of her eyes as she sat straight up, wide awake. As she recounted this story, I sensed a tinge of angst as she then said, "I don't like to talk about these things." She's speaking of the mysterious and paranormal. She said, "because I'm afraid they may be true." This was a big clue for me. It may not be just the unknown that one fears, but also the experience of knowing it. That occasional, often unannounced glimpse of the bigger reality that is always present and yet usually hidden by the lenses for which we typically see our world. In another account of which I documented in my book, Conscious Musings, I tell the story of a close friend who frantically calls me to tell me that she personally witnessed a lid from her pot in her kitchen levitate and then fly across the room, landing at the tip of her foot. "I had to call you," she said, "because you would be the only one who would believe me." Her greatest fear was not in witnessing the event itself, but the ridicule she would invariably endure from her husband and her children if she were to tell them what happened. Fear on some level seems to be a common thread throughout these experiences. But is the real fear about the incidents themselves, the risk of ridicule, or the fear of personal power that each experiencer may ultimately be glimpsing?